Hello and welcome to the latest installment of Black Mirror. No, I'm joking. Hi, my name is Shane Freed. This is the ninth installment of the Body-Mind Connection, a learning theory and child development process specifically for AuDHD children and teenagers. I lead Sincerity School, which is a worldwide attempt, right, or worldwide intended attempt to create an educational model that is transferable and free for all people who want to create schools under the Sincerity hat for AuDHD children and teenagers specifically. And I have a team of people behind me, Dr. Joseph Delaney, who is a neuroscientist and a SEND educational consultant, and he is overseeing everything. Equally, I have a team of people, Liz Church, Lauren Smith, who else is on the team there? Sarah Clarkson Spurs, there's who else? Who's been active? Quite a few people, right? And we have been building the junior school curriculum and planning the whole school processes for the last months and months. Now, don't run away, right? Because this is all relevant to you. And as I'm doing this, I'm also developing this learning theory and child development theory that can be applied in a learning facilitation setting and also in parenting, right? So if you're a parent to an AuDHD child, this is also useful for you, right? And is really kind of important at this stage for this to feel like um, it's reaching people who need it. And, I'm doing my very best to communicate as clearly as I can and get it out to as many people as I can. But if the videos um, relate to your own experience, if they are useful for you, if you feel like the body-mind connection theory has been helpful at all, please consider donating to our fundraiser, which I'll connect to the top of the video at some point later after I finish this. Because we are raising money in order to run things, and your support really does matter. So thank you. Right, so this particular phase, number 9, is specifically about maintaining authenticity and differentiating between others and the world for AuDHD individuals, which for them, this is a major problem, right? And a lot of the difficulties are unconscious, and it's through the learned patterning that we instill in them when they're very young. So what I'm presenting here is how to undo the programming that causes them to self-erase later in life unconsciously. And I'll explain in a little bit more detail too why that's so important and why it's so valuable to make important now. Okay, so I've fired that out everywhere. So I'm gonna just very quickly get to the presentation, which I've taken a long time on. My day starts at 4 in the morning these days, folks, right? I am a 4 in the morning girl, and then by 12, my day is done. So, this is kind of where I'm at. I've been up from 4 doing all sorts of stuff, and I'm exhausted at this point, right? So I'm just gonna get what we need up here. No, that's not it. Where is it? There it is. Okay, great. Show. Right. Oh, that's not the start. Lovely. Okay, please ignore that for a second. I'm not very tech savvy. I say this every week. It's not a strength of mine. Right. Okay, so meaning, place, and space. The body-mind connection is a self, others, in the world, learning naturally from within oneself. So we're using neurology and physiology to create connections between self, others, and the world, and recognizing this as a process, both within a day, within a week, within a minute, within an hour, right? And learning to identify and integrate what we see inside of that process to support individual children and their individual experience. So no blanket approaches, right? So today's session is about teaching AuDHD children to differentiate between themselves, others, and the world for improved health and learning outcomes. So let's have a look at this here, and let's talk about what we think is so, oh no, I've done it wrong. Sorry, I'm extremely tired. So I'm going to make mistakes. So I'm just going to be very kind to myself about that. Now, right, so 7 invisible problems for AuDHD children. There are gaps in social understanding. They will cognitively demonstrate understanding of circumstances they've met multiple times, but when the context changes, the person changes, the circumstance changes, it will take them longer to recognize what's necessary in those instances. They do not retain social information as well as others and will have difficulty adapting in the way that people expect, right? They have slow processing skills. Now, that does not mean that they themselves are slow, right? I had this issue, right, where people assumed, right, because it took me longer to take information in, that I wasn't seeing everything, right? It's not the case, right? I will take in loads and loads and loads of information, and later things will land with me, but in a much deeper, more integrated way than they would in the immediate minute, simply because of the amount of information I'm taking in minute by minute, day by day, especially if I'm in social circumstances and I'm sleepy or tired or drained or feeling dysregulated. Um, this is something that they all struggle with. So time, in essence, when we create deadlines and structures around AuDHD children that don't take in their slow processing way of working, their bottom-up thinking, we might make assumptions about their capacity and their intelligence that are really incorrect, right? And integration of habit takes longer too, but I'll talk about that later. So decision-making issues, right? They really, really struggle with that. Assumption of honesty. They assume everyone around them is being honest, right? And it doesn't matter how many times they learn the lesson that not everyone is honest. They will still find themselves being lied to and believing those lies, right? And it's just from an earnest place, right? And they're wired that way to see the best in people and to meet people from exactly how they present themselves. It usually takes a long time for them to realize when there are hidden agendas or that they're in an unsafe circumstance, right? So this is all quite serious. Poor working memory, right? Now, I have a phenomenal memory for some things, and then I have a phenomenal memory for other things. And this is entirely dependent on the day, the hour, the week, the minute, the year. There are things I'll be able to recall that other people won't. And what I hold on to is dependent on its meaningfulness to me. So this process of meaning, place, and space, right? The use of meaning, place, and space language, and also meaning, place, and space as part of the body mind curriculum, um, is sort of understanding meaning, right? And its relation to memory for children, and also memory retention and body movement, which I'll talk about in the next session, not this one, right? So poor working memory, when we don't give memory supports or we overwhelm children with information that doesn't have memory support, like 3 steps written down and then another 3 steps written down, for example, or 3 things they need to know for definite that they can refer to, we're overtaxing them. My son, for example, with phonics, I will sound out the word in total first and then I'll let him read it to me. And people will think that's cheating. I'm like, no, because he's not going to retain the impression of the word without a prompt first. And that prompt needs to keep happening for him. He needs more consistency and more repetitive support than other people do. Not because he's not retaining, but it's because he's taking in information in a different way to others, right? And it's very visual, very kinesthetic, very sensory, right? So the sound of my voice even um familiarizes and makes friendly something he doesn't enjoy, right? So it's just understanding how meaning is made. It's very emotion based. Intense empathy and enmeshment with others, right? So this is a major thing. It's something that teenagers really struggle with too, and I'm sure at some point I will cover this for the teens, and hormones and things like that, but we're not really on that yet. But they have intense empathy for others, and that can sometimes cloud their capacity to see other things that are ongoing. Their emotional responses are engulfing at times, and they can enmesh with others in ways that are outside of reality. Like limerence is a big issue in teens and adults, where they connect and attach very deeply. And also the enmeshment sometimes happens where they believe themselves entitled to other people because they've decided that person is mine. Like my son struggles with this as well, right? Where it's like that's not the case, and that can be quite frightening for children as a whole. And also when they don't recognize that that's not healthy and it's not demonstrated to them that there are healthier ways to relate, it can get really icky. They only do it as a form of safety and to help with dysregulation. And if they're conscious of their own dysregulation and given other choices or other ways to manage it, and they have other ways to make themselves happy, then they're all right. Right? Their intensity of feeling doesn't drive their subconscious behavior then. Um, what's important to them is rarely important to others, right? So what is casually dismissed by neurotypicals could be extremely integral to their safety and sense of well-being. Here is an example of all of this, right? So here's my son, right? I have been trying to solve the problem of me not wanting to play cars with him for years. His games for years I found infuriating because I didn't know how to move on past just picking one up. And then I realized he had exactly the same problem where we'd start a game and he'd be like, right, we're going to play cars. And he would have no idea where it was going to go next. And neither would I. And then we'd both just forget we were playing with the cars and he'd just end up playing them by himself because I didn't know how to continue that process. They sometimes need things to be more complex, right? And more interesting and a little more laid out and a little more organized. So recently we've been playing with scenarios and I created a teddy bear's picnic for him and this blew up and he was really responsive and immediately in it because he had a sense of meaning, place and space to explore that, right? So there was a structure provided for him that he could understand so then he could build upon it with all of his own imagination and his own ideas. Whereas we just looked at him picking up a car and then doing nothing with it, we'd think he had no imagination and he wasn't capable of doing anything. That's not true at all. So 6 invisible gifts in AuDHD children. I'm not doing this to cushion, right? Because sometimes we are overly responsive to the problems and don't recognize that in order to solve the problems, we might have to start leaning towards the strengths. If we lean towards the strengths in AuDHD, the problems start to resolve themselves, right? And this is what I've seen anyway, from my own perspective. Don't have to agree with me, but that's what has been presented. So it might be worth having a look at these. So relentless honesty, unless they're dysregulated and they're unable to access their own emotions, which we'll talk about later, or sometimes they'll start being agreeable when they're not in agreement with whatever's happening, and then they can't really realize this. If they're being dishonest in any way, they don't mean to be, right? So relentless honesty, highly perceptive, very imaginative, curious about people and the world, trusting, loving and kind, strong sense of justice, extremely creative when given time and room. There's a kind of an essential harmlessness that I think is overlooked a lot. Now, I have put next to this list a bunch of plants and flowers that are depicting geometry and nature, right? So they have the same patterns as 3D platonic solids and fractal forms, which are the building blocks of creation and are quite perfect, right? So there's the Fibonacci sequence, there's flower of life, there's lots of sacred geometry in there, and you can see it inside of everything in nature when we look at it carefully and deeply enough. And what looks very unique and strange to us is in fact part of everything and designed perfectly. So where we see complexity, that complexity is a copy of what is natural. And where we see AuDHD children and we see complexity, we might not understand that it is just as integral to the workings of the world as nature is. It is part of nature. There's not anything wrong with them. In fact, they're designed perfectly. And if we protect the perfection of that design, we can see it is quite beautiful and necessary for the world as it is. Right, so look at those flowers, aren't they gorgeous? Right, so AuDHD children do not experience any activity or memory in the same way as neurotypical children do. So everything is new, so what should I do, right? So they're always in a state of, well, this is brand new again, right? And especially if they're tired, if they're overwhelmed, if there are sensory issues. They are easily led, easily confused, and easily overwhelmed, and will easily hand over their independence when the stress levels in the body are high. Even brushing teeth is brand new for them. It feels like the first time every day, even if they get better at it every day, and it takes longer to establish habits. And depending on sensory issues, sleep, and the pace of their activity, they can lose all sense of meaning, place, and space very quickly, which is why this is part of the process of body mind. Now, Skill loss is normal and part of their lived experience, where there are sometimes going to be occasions where they can't do practical things for themselves. And that is okay, right? Because they are maybe overusing other elements of their capacity. And progress is never linear. With my son and with students that I've had in the past, because I am an educator, you might notice there's no progress at all for months, and then suddenly, if their connection to something is consistent, they've brought it all together and they're able to do whatever it is they couldn't do previously. So their development is sometimes instantaneous, apparently, right? And when we remember this, it makes a big difference to how we approach them. They mask intensively so in order to cope when distress is not identified. So masking is the last resort and indicates extreme hidden distress. We work to prevent this at all costs, right? Very often masking comes due to attachment issues, fear of abandonment, fear of isolation, fear of rejection, fear of being left alone, fear of being criticized, fear of being attacked, right? Just all fear-based, right? And when they are their authentic selves, especially if they've been undiagnosed for a time, or not identified their neurodivergence, they will be used or have learned at the deep unconscious level that expression of their own needs is either extremely dangerous or brings them harm, right? Which causes meltdowns and outbursts and sudden changes in behavior or perspective, and it might have been running on the underneath the whole time. So what we do here is we create cultures, and this is what this session is about, creating a culture where meaning, place, and space is defined by them, right? And we create that structure around them where they know who they are and they can express who they are safely. Now, speaking of beautiful things and uniqueness, James Weiss is a professional microscopist, and I found him yesterday. This video is of one of his projects. Now, this guy's amazing, right? His name's Jams Germs on Instagram. He makes these beautiful videos of microscopic life forms that I'm going to play the video for you, that he films, gives kind of names to, and teaches us about. And there are some species that he's discovered that hadn't been seen for thousands of years, because he spends all his time doing this. And what I love about him is that he's not doing it from a very formal space. I don't know whether he's neurodivergent, but there are clues, right? Because in his blogging, he spends hours and hours doing this, and he makes the wee videos of beautiful music and everything. And it's so gorgeous. And this is Jake the tardigrade, who's like, or a water bear, which is a type of like kind of little organism that lives inside of pond scum or just like water. And he tells us all about these creatures and what they're doing and how they function. And then he shares a little bit about his own mental health or his emotional health or his well-being alongside, And this feels like such a beautiful reflection of how neurodivergence connect, and not assuming, because he might not be, but there's an intense love of certain things, and their love of things is the unmasked state. And it's a way to regulate as well, to lean into the things that they love, no matter what's happening around them. And some amazing, complex, wonderful creations come from that kind of intensive focus and level of selflessness as well. Just really nice. So you can check him out, Jams Germs on Instagram. Now, I want you to read the below with me and then possibly have a look at those images over there of more flowers that are depicting the building blocks of creation. A child who is never offered choice will learn that being obedient and suppressing their nature stops them getting punished. A child who is never given space or time to explore, go slowly, or try things on their own will learn that they are incapable. A child who is never shown how to access their own preferences learns to copy others to keep themselves safe. A child who is in distress and no one notices learns that they don't matter and that they must pretend they are just fine when they are not. A child who has joys, interests, excitements, and curiosities will learn from these better than from anything we force them to take on. So choice-based learning now. Now, excuse me a second, I'm going to just flick up my presentation because titles are hidden from me and I've put an awful lot of time into this today and I want to be able to see what I'm doing. A couple of people have joined me there. Thank you very much for joining today. That's really nice. I'm glad you're here. So choice-based scenario, personal agency. So let's have a look at that. A child learns to mimic, copy, and follow rules without question when in a dysregulated state. It helps them zone out, right? So they'll follow rules only so they get a break from everybody else and everything coming at them. Positive encouragement of their own energy, agency, and creating educational settings which support that agency allows the child to learn from head to hand to heart, where every step they take is a reflection of their own true feelings. So what they see themselves doing or choosing then informs their nature, their heart for the future, right? So they get to observe themselves in their own space and time, which they can't do if they're taking instructions all the time and don't understand why they're doing that. None more important than teaching them ways to say no that support their nervous system and emotional needs. I'm going to talk about this now. This is something I've taught my son very recently. I am important. My feelings are important. No, I will not do that. And I've said he can say that anywhere to anyone at any time. And it is safe to do so. The rules of AuDHD agency, and that includes me, right? They can say no, and adults will respond positively and with alternatives. There are no ultimate authorities unless their safety is under threat. That's what I tell my son. I will always let you choose unless you're unsafe. They do not need to rush any decision and can change their mind. They are allowed to express preference and adults will respond. Let them see that adults respond to them as well. That's something I've shown my son where I've kind of supported him in communicating his needs to the adults in his school and then let him see how the change has been affected so he understands that his voice has an effect. That was something I struggled with. So meaning-making scenario, authenticity. Neurodivergent children have so much information to process every minute that they forget they are a source of information themselves, right? Golden rule, back to the body. How does this feel for you? What might this feeling mean? Is it a yes, a no, or a maybe? You might find my perspective today is directed at those who assist these children. So if you're someone who's a parent, a carer, or an educator, and you're working in a one-to-one basis with a child who is AuDHD, there's lots here for you to adopt. I am lovable for being myself. What I love and what I don't love matters. I am loved and it is safe to be different to others. I have been trying to get my son to like semolina the last week, and it was wonderful because he would try foods and then pretend to like them, and then I could see he didn't like it. And I said, you can tell me that, it's safe to do that. And he turned around and he used this, when I give him the opportunity to, because I taught him about it days prior. He said, I'm just being myself. I don't like semolina. Because I'd very explicitly said to him, because he needed to hear it explicitly, because he doesn't know this explicitly, it is okay to be different. You are still loved to be different. You don't have to be the same as other people. People love you when you are yourself. We are supposed to be different to each other, and it's okay to be. And now he's learning, I'm just being myself and expressing his genuine opinions about things rather than being agreeable, which he's likely to do, right? And I've seen him do this with people. He'll mirror accents, he'll mirror behaviors. And it's just because he just enjoys the company or the attention, or he feels loved in that space, and it helps him to zone out and get a wee break from being overwhelmed. But if he can be in a rested state whilst also expressing himself, which is not easy for neurodivergent children, then he flourishes. And that's what meanings, place, and space, language, and culture ensures that they have. So phrases to use in support of these children. You are allowed to dislike things. You are allowed to be different to your friends. You're always loved. Isn't it fun to learn all about you, right? So that if we don't pay attention to what we like or dislike, we don't learn about ourselves. And his favorite subject is himself, right? And he's not the only AuDHD child who's like that, right? Where they just love learning about themselves, right? If someone doesn't like your choice, you can say, I am being myself, and that is important, right? So you're just like, yeah, stay with yourself, right? Don't let other people undermine or override you. Major thing for neurodivergent children as a whole, because very strong, very controlling personalities, pushy people tend to overwhelm them because they are very, very gentle. And what they will give away is their own power and their own authority and their own feelings, not realizing that they're doing it and how important it is. And it is very, very important. Always check what your body says first. Does this feel safe or good for me? What do I not know about you right now that you would like me to know? That's a really, really nice question. What do I not know about you right now that you would like me to know? That's giving them the room to express and become aware of anything that's happening within them that they might be struggling with. You might see them kind of hesitating over something and be like, do you want to share something with me? Maybe that'll help. A child will tell you the truth when they don't want something. Honor it. It fosters trust. My place, including AuDHD in the big picture. So I'm talking about my son again, but I have to. So my son is 5. He told me without prompting that when I told him about AuDHD, I knew it right away, Mummy. Right? He's 5. And he just unprompted said, I knew exactly what you meant. Right? And it's crazy that he's able to do that. I still can't get over it. He baffles me all the time. A 5-year-old might not have the vocabulary, but he lives inside his experience. It informs everything in his world. We cannot erase what is real for him. So where we might see and understand neurodivergence as being different, it is extremely important that we allow them to inform how they experience it. And we consistently go back to them to find out what their needs are, how they're feeling, what they interpret, what they understand, and what they don't understand. Our assumptions can sometimes be very, very harmful. When we normalize difference, big feelings, uniqueness, and allow emotions room to be seen, named, accepted, and acknowledged, we create a safe world for AuDHD children to thrive. Ways to manage this. So tell the child what you are here to help with. Any person at any point at any time. Identify yourself and your role. That's creating that structure where they feel safe to expand it. Tell the child about their AuDHD, what you do know about it, what you're able to inform them of that will support them making choices later. And then also say, tell me if this feels right for you, right? Allow them to have autonomy over that information. Tell the child what learning is for with anything that you're putting them through. Give them a purpose, meaning, place, space. It would have meaningfulness for them unless you've shown them how it relates to them. Again, creating structure that they can expand within. Tell the child who the stranger in the room is and what their role is. So that's just an example, right? They have lots of people, lots of things to integrate every day. They're not going to organically or intuitively understand what people are doing or what they're there for. They're not. Right? And be honest with them so they can create that structure inside of their own minds that creates peace and space internally. Tell the child their feelings matter and show them through action. So it's not fair to allow a child to communicate with us and then not follow through on what they've said. We need to demonstrate for them that, they do have significance in the world because that's giving them place inside of a larger network. Show them they belong to a network of people who will see them, care about them, and will listen to them, and that their AuDHD plays a role in how they're being understood. And is it in fact a beneficial thing because it's giving them a voice? Right? Do you see what I'm saying? Rather than being AuDHD is like a disorder or a problem or something to be ashamed of. No, it's my nature, it's my neurotype. And it's comfortable, it's allowed, it's safe, it's a good thing. Right. So these are ways that, in junior schools especially, these things can be helpful. So And it is an intuitive process, particularly when we're noticing where connection is either lost or established for a child. Sometimes they're in connection to self stage where they're starting to miss a tune, maybe not engaging with the learning, maybe not engaging with you. Art as access, feelings cards, emotion wheels, open questions, and body movement, sometimes breath work as well. All these things are really helpful. Also giving them vocabulary, colours, images to be able to identify where they are and where the disconnect is coming from, what's blocking awareness of themselves, you know. So it's bringing them back to center all the time so then they can reestablish a connection to the people around them and the learning around them. So those are just examples. Okay, so space scenario, allowing deep learning. So giving space to children. To support deep learning, which is the way AuDHD minds work, we offer them learning experiences which, one, do not have set deadlines or too many steps. 3 at a time is enough. I learned this the hard way for me. I tried to drive. Someday I'll go back to it when I can do automatic, but yeah, it was terrible. Now, 2, allow them to interpret tasks as they see fit at the time. 3, we offer our help as an option they can use and not by force. So, but let's go back to that first one. So, interpreting tasks as they see fit at the time. My son is flipping words around at the minute, and I'm trying to work out whether there's dyslexia present or not, but he's done it with his own name, where he's convinced his name is Finn Mullin D'Anthony Sean, right? And won't put his middle names into the middle, right? And when sometimes he's reading sentences, he'll say the last word first and the first word last. And that's his experience of reality. My attempt to correct him will give him a loss of trust in his own self and his own reality. And also his nervous system is informing his choices all the time. So sometimes when you're doing an activity and he's only able to do 1, 2, 3 and not 4, 5, 6, if you let him do 1, 2, 3 deep and well with plenty of space to do it, 4, 5, and 6 is more possible. Right? So if we can trust their choices in that way, it helps them with everything. Now, this is major. Mess and mistakes are part of learning, natural and permitted. I have to keep repeating this to him because he keeps talking about not being neat and tidy. Somebody said it to him last year. You cannot let it go. I am not neat. I am not tidy. And he started comparing himself to other people. And I kept saying, no, mess is wonderful. It's how you learn. We have to do things in a messy way in order for them to have meaning later. Like he paints with me and I paint as well, largely abstract. I really struggle with structures in paint and art. And the same with poetry. I struggle with writing. I have to write free verse. I can't do traditional structures unless it's I really concentrate. And even then, it takes the joy out of it for me, because it's about the musicality of the thing and the emotion more than anything else. And I've seen his paintings up against his class paintings. And whilst they're able to copy an image, he creates something new. It mightn't look at all like it's supposed to look, but this is how his brain works. And what he notices in a painting will be different to another person. Like he's able to point out shading and light and colours and shapes and feelings inside of paintings that children might see a circle and a square. Do you see what I'm saying? Right. So it's allowing them to be that and do that. So rules of exploratory space, if we want to adopt this for our own facility. We offer memory supports in all forms. They need prompts, more some days, less on others. It means nothing about ability. Like creating that structure allows them to flourish and go far beyond the expectations that we might have. What is unnecessary to overwhelm them with can be supported or scaffolded. This is part of the way their brain works. 2, we measure curiosity, engagement, creativity, independent thinking, and choice as markers of success, not end results. Their end result has nothing to do with their capacity. The amount of learning that has gone on is dependent on curiosity, engagement, creativity, independent thinking, and choice. And that whole process of their neurological processes expanding and activating. We can see them evolving individually through what they're doing. That is learning, not the result on the page. Three, we trust in the child. Things will take longer to master, but this will happen in its own time and not on our time. And then finally, mess, mistakes, and giving up are allowed. They can always try again tomorrow or later. Right, so we see how this works. Space is important. I love this. I really want to talk about this. Right, so following their favorites, an AuDHD child unmasks naturally when their favorite things are in focus. Right? Be curious. This is our job. Do you see all of this is our job right now? The meaning, place, and space culture that we can create is dependent on us. What does the AuDHD child love? Learn through observing as well as asking, because sometimes they can communicate it, sometimes they can't. What does the AuDHD child naturally talk about or lean towards? Take an interest and let them teach you. My son loves animals, so he learnt about endangered species and about extinct species the other day. I have never seen him more enthralled in all my life, and also very worried. He went, "Can you ask Siri or ChatGPT if hippos are okay? If hedgehogs are okay? What about cheetahs? How many cheetahs are left?" Right? And he was making all these like kind of making he kept sort of establishing the safety of these animals for his own well-being. I kept saying, there's plenty and people are out there doing animal conservation, but he wants to do animal conservation in the future now. I don't patronize him by lying. I'd be like, no, there are things out there in the world that you can be part of. And I love that he wants that. He also wants to save the seas. Like, what? Anyway, um, so offer them big picture ideas about the things they love. You could do this or that someday with animals who are endangered. So you allow them to see that there's a future that involves the things that they love, right? Because AuDHD children are so motivated by that. They're so motivated by what they're interested in. Like a hyper focus and the organization of that and the lovely patterning of that is really interesting. I remember I had to do it. When I was young and I was bored of my maths, I would pretend that the maths that they handed me was part of some job I had on Jurassic Park, right? And in order to solve the problem, like in my brain, I had to make up this whole imaginary scenario for like saving the world from some disaster involving dinosaurs, right? So I could then get past how dull the math was. Right? Like I had to trick my brain. It was really stupid, but it does help for them, right? It gives their learning meaning, and it also helps us to understand how to motivate them later. Sorry, I'm really tired, so I'm tripping over my tongue today. Now, over on the right-hand side here is a dream scene that I drew with him. I asked him what he wanted in the future, and it's sort of a blend of my things and his things. He obviously did the windows on the house. So he wanted a house. He wants a room, right, with a window or a skylight and bunk beds, and he also wants a sister, so we had to put her in. I have nothing to say on that. I really don't. Like, that is an enormous amount of pressure, but I'm not going to discourage him from dreaming big and improbably. Now, Nova Scotia Duck Holland Retrievers are his favourite dog now because he saw one in the park, so we had to put one of those in. And then we were learning about koi fish, so we had to put in a koi fish pond. And then trees and mountains were me. Um, and the flowers were me. And then obviously a vegetable patch because we have a lot once down our road that we can't get into, and he just is obsessed with this. Like growing your own food is amazing to him. And I would wither away to him and chat away to him while we're doing stuff like this. And it was all his own choice where he wanted the house to be, what country he wanted to be in, blah, blah, blah. And it gives us so much information about who they are as a person and what they value. So, like, these dream scenes are really, really helpful. And it's also very grounding and good for their nervous system to sit there and draw and communicate at the same time. There's this sense of shared companionship and partnership when we dream together, you know. Um, and allowing their leadership of that is showing them that they have control over their world or that they can influence their world. Like that's a really nice thing to do for a child. I remember, like my son, I think he's not listening to me, just back to that original point. And I'll say things to him and he'll bring stuff I've said up to me like weeks, months, sometimes months later. And I won't have realized he's listened. Like he told me about rain in Ireland, something I told him about rain in Ireland months ago, and other things like that. Like he just notices everything and it's meaningful for him. Like the things that these children make meaningful, we can never predict. And sometimes their minds, their hearts, their personalities, their vocabulary, their ideas sort of run ahead of their practical capacities at the time. But if we take heart and be present and be spacious and be patient, it all starts to catch up eventually. We don't have to force them to prove their value when it's right in front of us. You know, their potential's already there. It's very clear. So differentiation between self, others, and the world. Now, this is major, right? I'm going to talk about this in depth. There's a lot of words here. Please try and stay with me. So the focus globally for AuDHD children has often been to find ways to help them integrate with neurotypical settings, and this is backwards. We need to begin at the center and not the start, right? And it's the center of them in the immediate that tells us what's needed for the environment, which is why choice is so necessary. AuDHD children are not incapable, weak, slow, or burdensome. They can be perceived as that in environments that don't create that structure, safety, peace, meaning, place, and space for them. They are individuals, and we must learn to accommodate for that difference by teaching them explicitly how to identify it, understand it, express it, and advocate for it. If we don't teach these children how to differentiate between their environment and other people, they will suffer greatly later, and I will talk about this in the next slide. So, in essence, in order to integrate, we must help establish their sense of self, and likely over and over and over again, they're going to need constant reinforcement and reminder to go back to the body, to listen to themselves, to notice their preferences, to observe, to explore things and see what they're learning about themselves. They need all that because they can be overwhelmed so easily and lose themselves so easily. They need time to emerge, time to think, time to change their mind, and as their nervous system heals, time to see and feel themselves in greater ways. Seeing the positive results of their true self expressed is very powerful. So I don't want to read that now. I'll just read the bold parts. So it's why unmasking is so important. I spent my entire life, almost my entire life, undiagnosed, and I really struggled. Okay, I'll read it fast. So I personally struggle with this. I do not understand ambiguity at times, and I do not understand emotional reactivity in others. I don't. When people react intensely to me or present context in circumstances that I am not familiar with, I would automatically concede to the wishes of others. I believed I was responsible for everything that happened and would alter my behavior if someone seemed upset. I also accepted that others knew more and better about me and the world than I did. Actively being given meaningful jobs to do in my own way, that's should say own, using what I was best at, revealed my own abilities to me. I had no access to my own experience. I believed fully that others' perceptions were correct perceptions, assumed people were essentially honest, and would fail to notice if my own boundaries, personal autonomy, or safety were being threatened. It would send me into internalized meltdowns, though, as I knew something was wrong, as my body's alarm signals and own real experiences were routinely overridden. I couldn't identify hidden agendas or dangerous circumstances. I relied on rules given to me by others in blind trust. My imbalance meant I was wrong, that's how I interpret it, and not what was happening was wrong. And I spent my whole life like that. My distress was lifelong, chronic, and hidden even from myself. I lost me beneath all the demands the world placed on me. I could not self-actualize when I didn't know who I was. It's very serious. Now, here's Sinead O'Connor. She said, I don't agree with this romantic fantasy that people who suffer from depression are more likely to be artists. I find that I am more creative when I am happy, actually. Now, Sinead was never identified as neurodivergent, so I will never ever just assume or try and say that she was. But I agree with her on this point here. You know, people who are in suffering or in pain, they don't have to be. Nobody has to be. Happiness should be a human right. And a child's happiness, if made to matter, heals harmlessly. When we allow our children to love what they love and do what they love and follow what they love and listen to what they really love, all the masking just comes off. So when we notice when a child is happy and we support that happiness, they learn. And more than that, they flourish and contribute and surpass all our expectations and become wonderful parts of a wider and wonderful world. Everyone deserves meaning, place, and space. It is the ingredient to happiness. Just we all need to be brave enough to embrace change and influence culture like that. When we listen to the children, we get all the answers we need. They know better than we do. If you would like to support us, there is a fundraising link and I will put it underneath. I sincerely appreciate all and any contributions, especially now. And I will be back again another time. It's been lovely being here with you this morning.